Yevamos Daf Gimel contains the Gemara's continued commentary on the last Mishnah. The Gemara will have about 5 different sugyas. First, we're discussing the difference between a chareshes and a katana, why they have different halachos. Next, we'll discuss what is the status of a cheresh, what type of das does he actually have, is there a suffix deraisa that he may have be able to affect marriages on a deraisa level. And then we'll go on to discuss a shota, whether the reason she's not allowed to get married and her marriage doesn't count, and she can't be makabel a get, is that a deraisa or is that a derabanan? Then we're going to the 2 testimonies in the Mishnah, Rav Yechon ben Nuri and Rav Yechon ben Gudgeda, and the will comment and explain what they said and halachas we can learn from that. At the end, the Gemara will go to the sugya of a katan who's doing an aveira. Do you have to stop him? Briefly. So let's begin. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion of the differences between the marriages of a katana and a chareshes. Now, katana here means a katana yisoma who's married by her mother or her brother. That is a derabanan marriage. Chareshes can also get married midirabanan. It only has a derabanan chalos. And the Gemara says there are differences between them. Why? So the first thing on the list is that a katana who's a bas Yisrael married to a kohen midirabanan is allowed to eat truma, but a chareshes who's a bas Yisrael married to a kohen midirabanan is not allowed to eat truma. So first we're going to have to prove that these 2 halachos are correct, and second we'll have to explain why they are different for the 2. So the proof is from a Mishnah quoting Rabbi Yechon ben Gudgeda, who says that a chareshes who is married, even if she's married to Eraisa, that is her father married her off, and she's trying to receive a get herself, she can, because she doesn't need a das to get divorced. A woman can be divorced bal karcha even without das. That's the first thing he says. The second thing he says is that a katana, bas Yisrael, that's married to a kohen, eats truma. So you see there clearly that a katana eats truma, and you also see implied for there that a chareshes does not, because otherwise why would he leave chareshes and go to katana if the same halacha was true for chareshes? So the question is, what's the difference? So the Gemara answers the difference is because if you allowed a chareshes married to a healthy man to eat a truma, then you'll end up having a chareshes married to a cheresh eat truma as well. So the Gemara says, what's wrong with that? There's no problem with that. The Gemara says, correct, no problem with that. But if you allow that to happen, then you could even have a cheresh married to a healthy woman, give her truma to eat. That's also because she's married to a cheresh. There's no marriage deraisa of a cheresh. She is therefore derabanan married only, and deraisa she's usher to eat truma. It's an isser that carries misa b'dei shemayim, and we cannot allow that to happen. Says Gemara, why don't you at least allow her to eat truma derabanan? She's married derabanan, let her eat truma derabanan. Whereas answer to that is gzeira, she may end up eating truma deraisa. Okay, next question the Gemara has about the difference between a katana and a chareshes, so both married derabanan, is why is it that a katana gets ksuba and a chareshes does not get ksuba? So again, the Gemara has to prove it. The Gemara says its answer here up front first. The Gemara says that a katana people will marry even though they have to give her ksuba, because at some point she will grow up and they'll have a normal marriage. Chareshes will never change. People aren't going to marry her if they know that they have to give her ksuba, and we wanted them to be able to get married. In order to encourage that, we took the ksuba obligation off. But the Gemara has to prove that a katana has a ksuba and a chareshes does not have a ksuba. So first of all, about katana, the Gemara quotes a Mishnah that says that a katana who's mima enes, she does mean, she refuses the marriage, or if someone is a shnios la'arayos to her husband, or if someone is an islandess. So all these 3 don't get ksuba. Now, an islandess is a mekach tois, shnios is an isser derabanan, mima enes, she kind of rebelled against him, she walked out. So the Gemara says that shows only if she was mima ein does she lose her ksuba. The fact that she's a katana is not a problem. If she was a katana and she hung around until he gave her a get, she would get ksuba from him. So you see therefore that a katana gets ksuba. Now, about a cheresh, so the Gemara quotes a Baisha that says that there's a difference between whether a cheresh, that is a male deaf mute, is married to a female pikeach, a female pikachas, or if it's the other way around. If the woman is the chereshes and the man is the pikeach. So the difference here works out as follows. If there's something wrong with the man, then he's not obligated in ksuba. You cannot take into account any agreement that he made, and therefore if he's married to a pikachas, she does not get a right to demand ksuba. If he becomes healthy and he wants to stay in the marriage, then he would have to give her ksuba if he continues the marriage afterwards, but it would only be ksuba that an almana gets, not ksuba that a psul gets. Now, if the chareshes was the one the woman was the one who was a chareshes, so then the man has no obligation. It's implied that the man has no obligation to give her ksuba. However, if he decides to promise her ksuba on his own, even a ridiculous amount of money, he could make that promise. He has a right to give her whatever he wants if he wants to show whatever message he wants to show her. So that clearly shows that the cheresh, the healthy person, does not have to give a ksuba to a chareshes. And the question is, how is it different than a ketana? So Gemara's answer is, as we said before, Ketana people will be willing to marry, even if they owe Ksubach, a Charesh people won't be. Gemara says, if that's true, then we're really trying to set up the scenario that a Charesh should be able to get married. So then if the man is a Charesh, we should institute that he has to give a Ksuba so that people will want to marry him. Gemara says, no, women are more desperate to get married than men, and therefore a woman will be happy to marry a cheresh, even though she's not going to get a ksuba. She doesn't need the ksuba to be convinced in order to do that. So then Gemara has an incident. The Gemara says that there was a cheresh who lived in the neighborhood of Rav Malkio. Rav Malkio married him off to a woman and wrote a ksuba for him where he promised her 400 zuz and collected it for her. So Rava said Rav Malkio did a very smart thing over here. He made a business deal on behalf of the man. Had he needed an eved or a shifcha to take care of him, we would have been entitled to take 400 zuz from his money and buy one for him. So here, he used 400 zuz for a better investment. He got a wife. She's able to provide personal service as well as personal care in a relationship. Okay, now the Gemara goes on to the next sugya, which is the statement of Rav Chia bar Ashi in the name of Shmuel, discussing what is the das of a cheresh worth? What do we consider it to be? When we say that he's only married, he's only married, derabanan, what is his halach on a deraisa level? Is he considered to be a suffix whether he has real das or not? Is he married deraisa at least mi suffix, or is he vadai not married? So the Gemara has two versions of this. It's Rav Chia bar Ashi and Shmuel, different version of what he said. According to one version, he said, yes, it's a suffix. According to the other version, he said, no, it's not a suffix. The specific halacha that he refers to, is whether or not if somebody is mezana with his wife, does he have to bring an asham tali or not? Halacha is that an asham tali is a carbon you bring if one is not sure if he violated an issur or not. So if it's a suffix, then it would make sense you would have to bring an asham tali. If they're wife of a cheresh, suffix married to him, it makes sense you would have to bring an asham tali. If it's not a suffix, it would make sense you don't have to bring an asham tali. So according to the first version, Shmuel was saying it's not a suffix, you don't have to bring an asham tali. According to the second version, he was saying it is apparently a suffix and you do have to bring an asham tali. The Gemara shows that there's a brisa which clearly indicates that it's not a suffix. According to the first version, it's a proof. According to the second version, it's a kasha. And Gemara's answer is that there's another opinion that's different than the brisa, and that's Rabbi Elazar. According to the first version, it's not a proof because Shmuel is not really saying like the brisa. He really holds like Rabbi Elazar. According to the second version, it's an answer to the kasha. Shmuel is defending himself that brisa is not a kasha on him because he holds like Rabbi Elazar. Now, where is this brisa that shows that it's not considered to be a suffix? So at least the Tanakhama's position is not considered to be a suffix. So the brisa talks about 5 people who take truma, were not entitled to take truma, and there is no chalos of truma at all. The truma is not even a suffix. Truma goes right back to them. Doesn't count for anything. Those 5 people are a cheresh, shota, and katan. So our proof here is from cheresh. And the other 2 are a shliach who was not appointed, somebody who takes truma from somebody else's property who was not appointed, was without the knowledge of the person he took truma for, or a guy who takes truma for somebody even if he is appointed. The Gemara has a drasha elsewhere that a shliach only works for truma if he is appointed, and that a guy can't be a shliach at all. So these 5 people is vadai not truma. Now why is a cheresh vadai not a truma? If a cheresh took truma off his own property, if he has a suffix, if it's a suffix, whether or not he has a das or not, his truma should at least be truma misafik. Somebody should have to take truma again, but his truma should count misafik. It shouldn't go back to being chulin. So the Gemara therefore says, you see that this brisa holds that the cheresh is considered to have no das, not even a suffix on a deraisa level. So the Gemara says Shmuel does not necessarily hold away according to the first version, or it's not a kasha on Shmuel according to the second version, because Rabbi Elazar's opinion is that it is a suffix, and the truma does have to stay with kedushas truma misafek. So Gemara says, what then? In the first version, if Shmuel if you want to say he holds like Rabbi Elazar that it is a suffix, how come he paskin that it doesn't have to bring, that the someone is mezana, the wife of a cheresh, does not have to bring an asham taloi? He doesn't fit with Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar, you're telling me now, holds that he has the das to be able to take truma misafek, but asham taloi he doesn't bring. So the reason is because Shmuel is saying something else entirely. He's not talking about whether it's a suffix or not. He's telling us a halacha in asham taloi. Asham taloi is only brought for a specific type of suffix a person has if he didn't have error. That's if he has two things in front of him. One is also one's mutter, and he doesn't know if the one that he picked was the mutter one or the asa one. Like he eats two pieces, like he eats a piece of meat, and it was a mutter and asa one in front of him, and he's not sure which one he took. Or has beer with one of two women, both of them were in his house, and he doesn't know which one it was. So one is asa and one is mutter. That's when he has to bring an asham taloi. However, if you have one object and you don't know if this is mutter asa, or you don't know the halacha of this, so you don't know the status of it, that's not an asham taloi. You need two things to have an asham taloi. So Gemara asks on that, is it true that Rabbi Elazar holds that way? Rabbi Elazar says that a koi is an animal that's a suffix, whether it's chaylev is mutter asa, it's a suffix chaya or behema, and Rabbi Elazar says you bring an asham taloi for eating the chaylev of a koi. So he clearly holds that even though there's only one item and you're not sure what the halachic status is, you do bring an asham taloi. So the Gemara is correct. Shmuel disagrees with Rabbi Elazar about that point. Shmuel holds you don't bring an asham taloi for one object. Rabbi Elazar holds you do. But Shmuel was just happened to be agreeing with Rabbi Elazar that there is no asham taloi, and it would be for different reasons. According to Rabbi Elazar, would be because it's not a suffix. Oh, that is, we don't know what Rabbi Elazar would hold in the case of the asham taloi. We just know that he would say that the das of a cheresh is a suffix, and Shmuel agrees to that. And then Shmuel goes a step further, and Shmuel says he still wouldn't have to bring an asham taloi because there's only one object, only one item that the suffix is on, not a confusion between two items. Now, the Gemara says, what is the reasoning here of Rabbi Elazar's opinion? He holds that a cheresh is a suffix and his truma is truma misafek. What's the suffix exactly? The Gemara has two possibilities. First possibility is that he knows that the understanding, the das of a cheresh is weak. He just doesn't know when the cheresh focuses on something, can he achieve clarity in it, and therefore it's binding on him. So if he takes truma, he did understand what he was doing. It's weak or difficult for him to get to a point of understanding, but once he does something, it has legal halachic status, and that doesn't change. He's always like that. He's somewhere near the border. We just don't know which side he's on. That's our suffix. The other possibility is that his das is fine. It's weak, but it's fine. When he does something, it's fine. That's clear to us. The problem is that he goes in and out. He switches from being healthy to being unhealthy. He's not always the same. So says Gemara, what's an afkamina? What's the difference? Either way, we have a suffix. If what he does is binding or not. Gemara says there's a big difference, and that's if he marries a woman, can he divorce her? If we're not sure, but it's always the same, so then okay. Whatever amount of das he had at the marriage, he had at the divorce, whatever he put into it, he took out of it, he canceled. So either way, the woman's free to go. If, on the other hand, he goes in and out of a state of understanding, so it could be he married her in a state of understanding, and he divorced her in a state of not understanding, so the marriage takes effect, and it's chal while the divorce is not, and she remains married. So the Gemara says, we don't have an answer to this, take you, the question's going to stand. All right, now we move on to the next halacha in our Mishnah, which was where we saw that a shota, a woman who's a shota, cannot get a get. You're not allowed to divorce her. So Gemara says, why not? So Gemara says it is a dirabanon, a takana dirabanon that she can't. The deraisa, you could divorce her because any woman does not need das to get divorced. She can just be makabel get bal karcha. Even a healthy woman could be given a get to bal karcha against her will. She doesn't have to agree, so she doesn't require any das involvement. The rabbanon meaning zera, that she would be hefker. Since she doesn't know how to take care of herself, she'd be hefker. We don't want women to be a situation of hefkerus. So the Gemara says we have a kasha on this, and that's we know that the halacha, there's a limitation deraisa of what kind of a get you can give, of what kind of woman you can give a get to. Even though you can give her a get bal karcha, she has to be able to guard her get and not lose it, and she has to understand the concept of being sent away and don't come back to the man he's divorced you. There's Xeris Hakasu says Vanasim Biyada, she has to have a hand to be able to hold it, and Vishulchan Mibeso, she has to be able to go and not come back. Otherwise, there is no Gerushin even Doiraisa. So Gemara says, this woman, this Shota, what are we talking about? If she understands these things, so then she shouldn't be hefker. She should be able to take care of herself. If she doesn't understand them, then she should not be able to be Nisgarish Midaraisa. Why telling me that it's only Derabanan? So the Gemara says, we're referring to where she has a middle level. She has a hand, she understands that, but she does not know how to guard herself from being treated in a hefkerus kind of way. Therefore, she has Gerushin Daraisa, she does not have Gerushin Midrabanan. So Zabai, if you look carefully in the language of the Mishnah, it implies that the problem with divorcing a Shota is Darabanan, because it says, Lo Yotzi, cannot send her away. When we're talking about the man's a Shota, and he can't give a get under any circumstances, Daraisa, there we say Lo Yotzi Olamis, it can't send her away forever. That's halacha that could never be repealed. So therefore, that shows that there's a difference between the two. This is Daraisa and this is Midrabanan. Okay, going on to the next comment. The Mishnah had brought the opinion of Yochanan ben Nuri, who said, why is there a difference between a man who's a Cheresh and Shota doing a divorce and a woman who's a Cheresh and Shota doing a divorce? Don't see why there's a difference between them. So the Gemara asks, which one was he bothered by? He was bothered by why the woman could get divorced, or he was bothered by why the man can't get divorced? Which one did he prefer to be? So Gemara answers that there's contradicting implications if you look carefully in the words of the Mishnah. When he asked the question, he was answered by the Rabbanan, who said, a man is not like a woman. A man cannot give a divorce against his will. He needs that. A woman can get divorced against his will. She does not need that. So we said a man is not like a woman. That means we were asking about the man. We understood the woman. We were saying that a man should be like a woman. The answer was no, a man is not like a woman. The Gemara, the Mishmah, the other way though, is the Gemara brings the next line where it says Avzu Kayotziba, where it says she is just like him, referring to a case where the woman could get a get Bal Karcha. That was quoted by Yochanan Good Gida, so that shows the other way, because we're saying she is just like him. That means the question was on the woman, why is she different? So the Gemara says, therefore, you have to say that Rav Yochanan ben Nuri was not okay with either one specifically. He just said, here you have two things that aren't the same, what's the difference? Not specifically bothered by either side over the other. All right, next we had the comment of Yochanan ben Gudgida, who said a testimony that a woman who is married, D'Oraisa, can get a get even though she can't be makablet because she is a chareshes. So that means that because she's allowed to get a get Bal Karcha. So the Gemara comments based on this, that since Rav Yochanan ben Gudgida is testifying that she could get a Bal Karcha, the following case works. The case is where a man shows a shtar, a document of some sort, to two witnesses, and he says, this is a get, I'm going to give it to my wife. Then he goes and he turns to the woman who didn't hear that, and he says, here's a loan contract, and she takes it. So according to Rav Yochanan ben Gudgida, she is divorced. She doesn't have to know what she got. She can get divorced Bal Karcha, and it's fine. The Gemara says, yeah, that's pashut. What's a chiddush in that? So Gemara says, the chiddush is you may think by him later calling the thing a loan shtar, a contract of loan, he was canceling the get. He was saying, I don't want this to be a get anymore. And the answer is no, he wasn't canceling the get. He was embarrassed to actually give her the get and say, here, I'm giving you a get. Instead, he just gave it to her and told her, here's a loan, and then she'll find out when she gets home what it really is. Now, the Gemara is going to talk about the subject of making a katan, allowing a katan to do an isser. We had mentioned earlier in the beginning of the daf that we don't have a problem allowing a katan to eat truma, that he's not allowed to eat d'oraisa, but an adult who is not a cheresh, we do have a problem. So the Gemara says that Rav Yitzchak Bar Bisna lost the keys to the base medrash in the Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. Now he needed to get them in. What was he going to do? So he went to Rav Pedas. He said, what am I supposed to do? Rav Pedas said, go bring a bunch of children to play in the area. They'll find the keys and they'll bring it. They'll bring it to the shul, and then you don't need to worry. So you see there clearly that they were allowed to allow the children to do the Isser of carrying on Shabbos. We can't tell them to, but we're allowed to. We don't have to stop them. So Gemara says, let's maybe have a proof to this. The Bryce that says someone should not tell a child, bring me a key or bring me the signet ring, but he's allowed to leave him pulling out plants or throwing things in Rosh Hashanah to Isur. So that proves that you're not supposed to tell him to do an Isur, but you're allowed to leave him doing an Isur. So the Gemara says a bias is not a proof. It could be that those are only Isurim Derabanan. Pulling out a plant means from a flower pot without a hole, which is not considered to be growing deraisa, and throwing things could be in a carmelis, which is only derabanan, and there's no iser deraisa there. However, in the case of an iser deraisa, you would have to stop.